I'm going to put two images on the screen. You will have to identify them and then write an essay about them. And there will be 3 essays for a total of 6 images.
Okay, so there's one set of things.
There will be a relationship, yeah. And when we review on Tuesday, we'll basically be doing that in class so you guys get sort of the hang of it. I will also be asking you a question, basically sometimes explicitly telling you what the relationship is. But you'll have to talk about them in comparison. Basically compare and contrast what we've been doing a lot in class, in your papers.
And the definitions
Yes, for the term, you should know the definitions, you should know the paintings they apply to, so that if you see a painting or a work of art on the screen and you know a term that probably goes along with that, you should probably mention that would be relevant to your answer. Yes. What's that?
Any chance you connect on those keyboards?
Go get a signal driver. Go get a signal driver. I'll do it.
It'll come out so dark. Because I actually need
Any questions about my two? You're bringing up Blue Book on Thursday. If you come today, that Blue Book is blank. You're going to be turning it into me. You're going to be redistributing them. Okay.
So you're in charge of getting all these Blue Books?
I am not going to do it. There are 2 meters with the class and grading.
Right, there.
Yeah. The readers are also grading their papers. They are working hard at that. They have in their contract that they have a minimum 2 weeks in which to grade because that's a good class. So they're working on it. The disturbing phenomenon has arisen with the paper. Some people did not go to the museum. It's very evident in your paper when you did not go to the museum. And they'll basically receive a failing grade for that.
Right, how is it evident?
Sometimes it's evident because you talk about the wrong thing. Okay, so last time we were talking about the Rococo, lovely French culture, aristocratic culture, and we were talking about this image. What's important about this image? Yes?
Cuckold.
That's not an allegory.
It
has cuckolding in it with the first response. Does anyone know what cuckolding is?
It's a cheating.
Yes?
Basically, he's looking at her skirt.
Yes. Cuckolding is when your wife cheats on you. So where is that occurring in this painting?
On the left side.
Cuckolding, C-U-C-K. C-U-C-H-O-L-D-I-N-G. It's a regular term. It's an English word. It has nothing specific about this room. It's just a term when your wife is cheating on you. In any case, where is that occurring? How do we see that in this painting? Yes? Yes, there are 2 men in this painting. One here is the bishop, and the other presumably her lover, who is looking up her dress. What else is important about this painting? The statue. What's the statue telling us? There's the statue?
Cupid recognizes the love, but he's keeping quiet
Yes, the
about it.
statue of Cupid, so we know this is about love, and Cupid has a finger to his lips, basically letting us know that he's keeping the secret for us. What else do we know about this painting?
The husband's completely unaware. He's doing one action. He's completely unaware of what his wife is doing. Picking up her shoe and pulling her skirt.
Yes, this man over here, sort of eclipsed in shadow, seems unaware that there even is another man in the painting, and that his wife is kicking taking off her shoe and sort of showing her skirt to this guy. Yes?
Last time, didn't you say like when she kicked off her shoe that could like relate somewhere close to like an orgasm or something along those
It
lines?
has been speculated that this shoe kick, this flying shoe, might be a symbol of her orgasm.
Yeah.
Up to you if you guys are, buying that. Yes?
The lighting and the style of painting, which exemplifies figures of central attention and her, whereas all the rest of the paintings kind of bland in color, background and shaded or shading, just getting all the sunlight. And all the figures are completely shaded.
Yes, the light is definitely sort of shining on this woman, telling us that she's the focus of this painting. She's sort of emanating light, yes? We know this is a wealthy person. How do we know that? The dress, the garden, the sculptures, everything's telling us that she's very wealthy, yes?
Would this be the Rococo style?
Yes, this is the Rococo style. Yes?
Did this take a long?
The what?
Take a long?
No, Cyclopedia is the name of party, so it has to be like. But
What makes this different? This guy's a bishop and is
well, we know that the painting was commissioned by the lover and that he wanted a bishop in there. And he wanted, not necessarily that that's definitely her husband, but that there is supposed to be, this guy wanted another man in there who was unaware of what was going on. Yes. Yes, definitely rubbing in his face. Karen? Yes, there's no deeper meaning to the painting. Excellent. Which is sort of symbolic of the whole Rococo era. Because what were these people interested in?
Party.
Party, fun, spending a lot of money, yes. They didn't necessarily worry right now about a moralistic meaning, the way sort of the Dutch would have been worried that if we're seeing a scene of people having fun, there'd always be some kind of moralistic story telling us, oh, you had too much fun, something bad now might happen, etc.
And here is a statue. That piece garden was established strictly for cheating.
Yes, it does sort of seem to imply that this garden is cheating. Cupid as a statue is sort of stationarily, permanently telling us the secrets of love will be kept in this garden. It's an interesting sort of scene that we're looking at. So that was sort of the taste of the French nobility in the first half of the 1700s. Then we experienced the Enlightenment, essentially. This idea that, of course, and it's called Enlightenment because, the symbolic idea of light shining, really the light of knowledge kind of shining down on people, and realizing that, for one thing, it wasn't all about the divine right of kings. It wasn't any sort of religious power or mystical power that established the King of France as the King of France. That this is all sort of a social contract that, the peasants were also participating in. And we see a shift to more neoclassical style. So not paintings celebrating the fun of life and having sex and partying and all this stuff, but now back to these classical themes. So we started seeing this before at the Renaissance. This is again this rediscovering of classical themes after the fun times of the Rococo. This example is Angelica Kaufman. It's a classical theme, Cornelia, and she has a guest here who's showing off her jewels. And the guest then asks Cornelia, "Where are your precious treasures?" And she says, "Here are my children." So this is again a moralizing theme again, and you'll note that it's not about the jewels, it's not about the fun time, it's about being a good mother. You'll note the classical columns in the background. And so this completely sort of exemplifies a shift in French culture at this time. We have, before we get there, so we have also, in contrast to that, we have Marie Antoinette also commissioning portraits of herself. Marie Antoinette was Louis XVI's wife. And you can see sort of that she's less interested interested perhaps in the way Madame de Pompadour was depicted. Now we see sort of finery, but it's a bit muted for what Marie Antoinette, of course, would have depicted herself as. She's trying to show that she's a very good mother. She has her 3 children around her, and this is the young heir to the throne who never gets to inherit that throne, pointing to an empty sort of bassinet, which probably alludes to a death in the family of a young child. But very toned down from what Marie Antoinette could do. This is Elizabeth Lebrun. She was Marie Antoinette's favorite portraitist, here doing a self-portrait of herself. And as you know, we've learned again to look at self-portraits by artists. This is sort of the way they wanted to depict themselves. How would you say she's depicting herself? What message does she want to send to the viewer? Yes?
Young?
She's young, yeah.
She's owning the fact that she's a painter.
She is owning the fact that she's a painter. She's depicting herself actually painting. How would you describe her clothing?
Well, it's
What's that? Not spectacularly. Yeah, feminine, but muted, right? You have this black hood, yes?
Well, I'm not sure if this can correlate to art history, but I'll give it a shot. The sash around her waist is red, which could allude to lust, if anything.
I don't think, not in this case.
Right.
I don't think she's trying to say I'm a lustful painter. But I could see it in that case, yeah?
It's a very simple garment.
Yeah.
At the same time, it still has the amount of fabric and the stylization of it. It shows that she wasn't a porter, but she did have some sort of money and elegance to her.
Yes, absolutely. It's a very simple garment. At the same time, it's not inelegant. So she's not showing herself to be a pauper by any means. She is the Queen's favorite portrait painter. She is getting paid for that. But she's not trying to show off all this finery and dazzling. It's not satin, it's not velvet, it's not fur. All of those things that we've sort of seen in royal portraits, she's not doing that here. Another example of her paintings of Marie Antoinette, she did many of them. What's that? Yeah, so this is the portrait of Marie Antoinette by Elizabeth Lebrun. This is, by the way, no relationship to Charles Lebrun. And we see sort of the dazzlingness of the Queen. She's out in nature. She's comparing herself perhaps to a flower. We are asked to sort of indulge in all of the senses, not just vision, but perhaps smell. She probably, she's telling us that she's now, it's about nature, it's about being out in nature, appreciating nature with all of her fine things. Of course, a portrait, as I mentioned before, is always about flattery on some level. This is Marie Antoinette just a few years later, when she's basically being tried, and later will have her head guillotined, chopped off, when the French overthrow the King and Queen of France. So you can see the differences between when someone paying for their portrait, unpaid sketch by David, who we're going to talk about. So this is sort of the height of sort of the ridiculousness of the French monarchy is going on with, Louis XVI back at Versailles, Marie Antoinette. So remember, Louis XIV built Versailles. Louis XV moves the court back to Paris. Louis XVI goes back to Versailles. Have you guys seen the movie Marie Antoinette? A modern updating of this tale. It's not required of you to invite any scenes. I don't think it's a particularly good movie. But in any case, it was Louis XIV, remember, who established the French Academy, that this idea that there was going to be state training to painters, and that was in part because everyone realized what a great thing painters were to have on their side. And to train good painters do good propaganda. So in 1737, actually, the kings opened up the Louvre, a room in the Louvre, to exhibit the best work of the Academy. And this is an engraving from 1785, so much later. But starting in 1737, there were public salons. They were called salons after the room in the Louvre that they were occurring in, best students in the academy would show their work. So this is basically the beginning of the modern art exhibition. This did not happen before. Previously, where was art seen?
Private homes.
In your home, in the church,
Kingdom.
in the kingdom, in the castle.
Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was basically it. So there was no idea that there was a public for art because regular people didn't often come across art. You could see just the one thing in the church. You could see something if you were at someone's home, or if you were invited into the castle, which would usually mean you were part of the aristocracy. But normally you would not have an opportunity to see what's going on with just what's being created by artists. So this opening up what was happening in the academy, showing it to the public, here we are, the members of the public, was a really new thing. And it was basically the most exciting thing that was happening in Paris while it happened. So it would be held once every 2 years during the summer for 3 to 6 weeks. And it was free. And when something's free, what does that mean? You have not only the members of the aristocracy coming, but you have regular people coming. You have peasants coming. I mean, this was really the most entertaining thing that was going on. We don't have movies. We don't have television. You can't get on a plane or in a car and go hang out for the weekend or whatever. Like, this was your visual entertainment. You had books, and then if you wanted anything visual, the salon was where you were going to find it. So that's sort of this idea, this public, this mixing of everybody, all of the classes would be interested in seeing what is being turned out by the French Academy. And you can notice something. How are the paintings hung here?
At an angle?
This seat? Yeah.
Yeah?
The small ones are on the bottom and the large ones are on the top.
Yeah, the small ones are on the bottom, the large ones are on the top. Is this different from when we go to a museum today? How are paintings hung?
Side by side.
Well, yeah. There's.
Individually, right?
Yeah,
Paintings are
yeah.
hung sort of there's a legitimate amount of space in between various paintings. It's not a big, huge jumble. If the painting is big, it gets, full space. It's not hung up by the ceiling where you can't necessarily see it. Everything is basically at eye level. So what the salon was doing, actually, they were also reinforcing their hierarchy of what was important painting with history paintings, those big paintings at the top. Now, this is also really practical because if a small painting is at the top, you really can't see it very well, can you? So the little paintings, or the still lifes, the portraits, whatnot, they would be on the bottom because they're small and you need to be up close to see it. And then the bigger paintings, the history paintings, come at the top. And so when you look at this way, it's history paintings are the most important paintings, and then everything else trickling down. They were also hung this way because there just wasn't a lot of space, and they were showing everything that was good, that was being turned out at the French Academy. There are a lot of practical concerns in how this work was displayed, but it affected the way artists were doing scenes. Here we go. Sorry, salon exhibitions, like I said, were regular after 1737, and they took place in a particular room in the Louvre, open to everyone. That meant that rich, poor, it didn't matter, everyone went to the salon. This is really the most fun you're going to have all summer. You have to go, this is like seeing the summer blockbuster. You have to go see it. This is what it is. So, this also, the birth of the public also actually spurred the birth of art criticism, which is pretty cool. This is a portrait of Deidre. He was a French Enlightenment figure, and he's also considered the first art critic. Because once everybody gets to see all these paintings, everybody has an opinion. And this guy wants to tell everybody what his opinion is. Just the idea of like a movie reviewer, essentially. We have art criticism now. So here he is. He also, coincidentally, was the man who was in charge of this major Enlightenment project that I mentioned last time, the Cyclopedia, which was published between 1751 and 1772, and included 30 volumes. So this was a really novel idea that all of the world's knowledge could be collected in written form. Yes?
Diderot was the art critic.
Diderot was art critic,
And he also-
and he published the Encyclopedia. Yes. You couldn't just look up, in a dictionary, in an encyclopedia, all the answers to everything. And so this was this big Enlightenment project saying, it's not, you don't get these answers in church, and you don't need to get these answers from your grandmother. We're going to write down all of the world's knowledge. So it's this incredible idea that that can be accessible to regular people. And that's what Deidre did. And every 2 years, when the salon would roll around, he would also write art criticism. He would write these pamphlets reviewing the paintings, picking out his favorites, saying what was good. And this was read very widely. This would be distributed to as far away as Catherine the Great in Russia was reading Diderot's art criticism, finding out about what paintings were good at the salon. So it's a very interesting moment, this idea that there's a public for art, that everyone can see it, and then painters, when they're painting their works, all of a sudden, what are they thinking about? What might they be thinking about?
Public.
The publicity. Yeah, they don't have to just please Louis XIV anymore. Now they might have to please the whole general public. So it also sort of changes the way what artists are thinking about when they create their work. Yes?
Or isn't that the case when at Flanders, when painters started?
Yeah, so painters are painting for the market. Yeah, definitely.
But
this is the
broader
first time
scale.
in France. And this is on a broader scale because in the Netherlands, when the Dutch were painting for the market, they're still sort of trying to say, it's not necessarily, they can't do history painting, because history paintings aren't going to sell. Here, we have the salon, they're not necessarily painting to sell it, but they're painting to please the public, for the public to know what a good artist they are. And there is still a market for history paintings. Louis the 15th, 14th, 16th, they're buying works out of the salon. Yes?
What's his name again?
Who? Diderot?
Is this the same, it says it's the same as Louis Van?
Yeah, Deidre. This is a portrait of Diderot. He was the first art critic, very famous art critic, in really circulating in very, aristocratic circles. Catherine the Great in Russia is reading his art criticism. Everyone's reading his art criticism, basically, from Catherine the Great on down. Anyone can get a hold of it who's interested in this opinion. It's like the first movie review or something. So yeah, this is Diderot. And he also happens to be, more important perhaps for history, he was the publisher of the Encyclopedia. So this is David's Oath of the Horatii. David comes up through the academy. He was very well regarded as a student. He wins the Rome Prize. The Rome Prize basically is the top prize in the class. The French government subsidizes your trip to Rome for 4 to 6 years. Remember Watteau, who won that? Now David wins it. And when he returns from Rome, he paints this painting, which is in the neoclassical style. And this is a complete shift, again, from Rococo. Rococo is all fun and games, essentially. Neoclassicism sort of goes along with this Enlightenment thinking, that we're returning again to those classical ideals, classical beliefs, classical morals, and that this is going to be these bigger themes, larger themes. It's not just fun and games, but themes of patriotism and loyalty, etc., which we'll see in this painting. Well, before I get into this painting, does anyone notice anything about this engraving? Yes? Yes, it's right here. This painting is in the middle. So, this painting was displayed in the salon. And as I mentioned, the salon influenced how painters painted. When you're painting a history painting now, you want to think, is it legible from high up? Now remember, a lot of those counter-Reformation painters were also thinking about, is it legible from far away? Remember, Rubens is thinking about that. He wants people to be in those seats. He wants them to be able to understand what's going on from the back row. He wants it to be convincing. Now the salon painters are also thinking about that. If my painting is hung at the very top of the wall, will people be able to understand what's going on? So what David does is he basically takes out all the details that could have been done in this painting. He minimizes the scene. He puts the action right up front. Now what this is a scene of is 3 brothers. This is called the Oath of the Horatii. 3 brothers, the Horatii, are vowing an oath to their father. Here's their father, here's the 3 brothers, that they are going to fight their neighbors, Horatii in Alba, the neighboring state of Alba, to the death. So what we have is a situation where Rome was warned And that will determine, that will end the conflict, essentially. So it does seem to make sense on a certain level. David, this is, yes, question?
What is this all about?
It's just their name.
It's like family name?
Yeah. They're Romans. Again, this is a classical theme. So we're harkening back. This is a history painting, big narrative. And what we see here is the three brothers, the Huratai, taking this oath of loyalty, fighting to the death. They know that there's going to be casualties. This father obviously knows that not all of his sons are going to come back. But this is essentially sort of the last time that they're going to be a family. But do you see that in any of what's going on here? There's no sense that there's going to be a personal loss on the male side of this painting. This is about loyalty, patriotism to the state, sacrificing yourself for the good of everyone. So this is what David is saying here on this side of the painting. But there's also this sort of split between sort of the male side and then we have the female side. And on the female side, we have the sisters and wives of the Huratai. And the interesting thing sort of about this story was that the wives of the Huratai were the sisters of the Huratai. They were from Alba. And the sisters of the Huratai are, one of them is betrothed to the Huratai, so they're engaged. So we have complete intermixing of these families that are about to fight each other to the death. So here, David gives there we go. On the female side, David splits this very legibly. There's no mixing up where the male side is and where the female side is. On the female side, we have sort of the wives and the sisters. They know that either their husband or their brother is going to get killed because not everyone is coming back. And so it's going to be a loss no matter what happens, no matter who wins, this family is absolutely destroyed. So David sort of isolates the emotion on the women's side, and on the male side, sorry guys, on the male side, we have no hint of that emotion. On the male side, it's all about patriotism, it's all about fighting to the death, it's all about loyalty to the state, it's all about this oath, also interfamilially to their father, who's telling them that this is what they need to do. No one cares that these children are going to be fatherless or uncle-less, or that they're killing their sister's husbands, or they're killing their wives' brothers. That's not what this game is about. It's about loyalty to the state above all else. So David does this sort of very legibly so that you can see it. From a distance, you can see this oath taking place. He evacuates pretty much everything from the background. Everything takes place in this sort of shallow stage-like setting. And you can split that line between the loyalty to the state and, of course, the emotional impact that this is going to have on his family. So everything is supposed to be very clear. Now, interestingly, this painting became a symbol of the French Revolution. Now, does anyone know when the French Revolution happened?
1792.
Sorry. No?
1789.
Thank you. Yeah, 1789. Bravo. When did the American Revolution happen?
1763.
1776.
Oh, well,
Just
you're talking about
FYI.
like...
Not important for this class, just important for life. Yes?
This is kind of unrelated, but do you think does the name the Academy have anything to do with like elevating our status because Aristotle School of Philosophy is also the Academy?
Well, I think part of the academy just means that it's a school. But yeah, it certainly could have been trying to play off of that. But remember, it was started by Louis XIV. It wasn't necessarily as in all of that. But yeah. So this painting is painted in 1785. And in fact, it was a state commission, which means it's essentially commissioned by the monarchy, by Louis XVI. Not directly by him, but essentially by his government. Interestingly, in 1789, this painting becomes a symbol of the French Revolution because it's showing sort of that, your own personal loss is not important compared with the good of the state because it's showing fraternity and David's painting, ironically commissioned for the state, by the state, is then also becomes a symbol of overthrowing the entire state. And what the French Revolution essentially started over was, of course, about sort of taxes and the first and second estates, what they were called the monarchy and the clergy, were on one side, and then we have everyone else, the poor people, the bourgeoisie, everyone else sort of fighting with monarchy and the clergy. Essentially to the point where in 1792, they kill off Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. But many other people lost their lives. So what happens is that a thing? Okay. So we have our salon. So what happens for David in particular, he's a state-trained artist. He comes up to the academy. He's doing commissions for the government. When the revolution happens, he sides on the left, the Jacobins, who are very much anti-monarchy. They're anti-royalists. Yes?
Did he have a last name?
Oh, this is his last name. Sorry, his name is Jacques Louis David. Jacques Louis. It's hyphen. Sorry. Yeah, so this is David's Oath of the Tennis Court. What David is depicting here, and this is a drawing, as you might be able to tell, what David is depicting here is an oath that takes place, and remember his last most famous well-known work was also an oath, the Oath of the Horatii. Here David is depicting an oath of the tennis court. Why is it called Oath of the Tennis Court? Is because it takes place on a tennis court at Versailles, where all of these people, all of these revolutionaries who decided that they're not going to take it anymore, that it's not, they don't have to have a king, they don't have to give, 60% of the wealth of France going to support this king's incredibly lavish lifestyle. Instead, they're going to establish this new government. It's going to be about equality. There's not going to be a monarchy. And here they're trying to write out sort of the new constitution. They take this oath of the tennis court that they will not leave until France has a constitution and it is stable and everything's good to go. So David is commissioned by the Jacobins, this is the people on the left, the revolutionaries, to do this big painting. It's supposed to be one of those big monumental works about very recent history, obviously, about things that actually happened, so history in the making. And essentially, David is not able to do this work. This is all he really gets. And part of the reason is that when you're doing a history painting, something as complicated as this, well, it takes a long time. It's not like a photograph. It's detail, and painting does just take time. That's part of the nature of it. And things were happening so quickly that just a few years later, all of the people in the Jacobins who had sworn their loyalty, half of them had been killed off by the Jacobins because loyalties were changing very quickly, and people who would rise to power and then think that everyone else was against them, they were an enemy, and they would get guillotined. So in all, I think about 40,000 people were killed during the French Revolution. Yes?
Was it Robespierre responsible?
Yes, and he was the Jacobin. Yeah, Robespierre was sort of the leader, and he was often sort of signing these death warrants for people. As soon as maybe you were suspected of not being completely loyal, completely on the left, you were sent to the guillotine too, along with the royal family, along with all the aristocracy. Everybody was being sent to the guillotine. And this is why David isn't able to complete this painting, because just, the next day, essentially, we're doubting loyalties. Maybe these aren't the people we want in the painting, etc. So it's hard to do these sort of history paintings of the French Revolution as it's happening because of shifting loyalties, because history paintings, because painting in general takes so much time. So this is what David gets to, essentially. One painting David does complete is the death of Maroc. Maroc was also part of the Jacobins, and he gets murdered by this woman named Charlotte Corday, who was a royalist. So Charlotte Corday supported the king, she supported the monarchy, and she sees that Maroc is this, he's writing incendiary pamphlets, he's signing death warrants to people, and she goes in and she stabs him with a knife in his home, and then essentially flees the scene. And David depicts this scene not as this crazy kind of murderous situation, but shows Maroc essentially as a martyr, in part because he didn't want to sensationalize what had happened to Maroc, but also because this was supposed to be sort of a tribute. If he had shown actual moments of sort of the knife going into Maroc, you can see the wound here, then it would be sort of the action, the protagonist of this painting would be Charlotte Corday, the murderer. And instead what he wanted was to show his friend, his very good friend, Maroc, sort of alone with, you can see all the clues to what has happened. There's the knife, there's a bloody knife here on the left. And we can see that Maroc was in his bath. He is reading the letters. On the letter you can see Charlotte Corday's name. So David is giving us this information. The way she got entrance to his house is that she said that she had important news to tell him, blah, blah, blah. So he's reading this letter that she's given him, and then she stabs him. And what's happening also is that we have Marat is in a bathtub. This is because, so again, David is showing us really sort of factual information. He's not making Marat this big, strong guy. Marat suffered from this nasty skin disease, so he was often in a medicinal bath, and he did a lot of his work in the bath. So that's how David shows him. He's not dressing it up. He's not making this elegant. He's really showing Marat very much true to life. And he actually did this painting from life but death, actually. As his friend's body is sort of decaying, David is painting. And this painting was shown at Marat's funeral. So this is very much a tribute to Marat. You can see here it says, to Marat, and then David signs his name, on this sort of box-like furniture that Marat would have had because he wasn't concerned with certain things of the world. There we go. To Marat, David. Here you can see the date. You got the compliments room, I might cover that up. It says 1793. And it also says something else. It says year 2. Because the revolutionaries so wanted to overthrow every sort of restriction that had been imposed on them by this French monarchy that they were going to rename the year. So this is year 2. Yes?
So we also need to know the dates.
Yes, you need to know the dates of the paintings on your list. Definitely. So this is happening sort of in the midst of the French Revolution. It took years of fighting, switching loyalties. The king and queen aren't executed until 1792, 93. Marat is killed in 93 because, again, because it still wasn't clear if the aristocracy was going to emerge, put someone else on the throne, or if the Jacobins were going to win, or if somebody else was going to take power. Who ended up being Napoleon. So, as we see, this very muted kind of idea of how to depict Marat, not necessarily as a hero, but as a martyr. And David is almost quoting earlier works of obviously martyrs. This arm that he has of Marat dangling down looks very much like Michelangelo, the way Michelangelo depicts Christ's arm in the Pietà. Looks very much like the way Caravaggio depicted Christ's arm in the Entombment. So we have these sort of homages to earlier paintings of martyrs. As David is sort of thinking through how to depict Marat, how to make this tribute to his friend, and yet not sensationalize what's happened to him. So we have the death, obviously, but it's supposed to be sort of muted, quiet, contemplative, not full of action. And partly that's also underscored by the fact that about half this painting is blank. It's not totally blank. You see there's sort of this shimmering sense of light. But it's not where the focus is. So David is taking a sort of vertical composition, but we're only really looking at the bottom half, sort of telling us there's this hole. Marat is just in this dark room. It's muted. We're not supposed to look at, when we think about the portrait of Louis XIV, we're supposed to look all around and see Louis on the stage, and see the curtains, and see the throne, and see all the other stuff that's going on. There's nothing else to really look at with David's painting of Marat. There's just Marat and sort of these sad little moments of the knife, the discarded knife, the quill in his hand, the letter that he's reading from Charlotte Corday. It's a very sort of quiet painting. Also, David, knowing that this painting was going to be displayed publicly, did not want to incite any more riots because Maroc and the Jacobins had been thought to be responsible for lots of riots in 1792 that resulted in killing thousands of people. So David didn't really want this to be sensationalized. He didn't want this to get people riled up. This was supposed to be contemplative and thoughtful and really exhibiting that loss for David of a personal friend, which is someone that he knew. This is not just a royal commission. This is, the loss of someone that he really was very close to. So that sort of was the middle of the French Revolution. David had a lot of students also, just to mention. This is Corday. He was a student of David's. Part of what's going on in the French Revolution is the abolition of slavery in the colonies. And so this is a portrait of JeanBaptiste. He was from Senegal. He was living he was sent by Haiti's commission to France to basically get legislation done that would abolish slavery in Haiti, which he did temporarily because Napoleon then reinstituted it later. But this is sort of a tribute also to egalitarian thinking about equality for all, not just white landed gentry. So at this moment, we have really these ideals of, this is where sort of we get the French ideals of equality, liberty, and fraternity, everyone sort of together. So this is Corday, David's student, painting this man who is partly responsible for abolishing slavery in Haiti. He's painted next to a bust of this guy, Reynal, who had written a treatise also arguing for the abolition of slavery. You can see influences of David in that, again, this sort of shallow stage. We have classical references with this pedestal, nice clothing. This is a depiction of an African man. Again, we don't see this this is a rare subject in Western art, but it's a part of this mood of the French Revolution is about equality, about, not having the people who were not born into the aristocracy would no longer be oppressed. So that's what's going on in that painting. David, well, in any case, I mentioned there's all these sort of shifting loyalties, things happening at a very fast rate, and the Jacobins fall out of power. David is thrown into prison because he has been affiliated with the Jacobins. Now remember, David starts out essentially affiliated with the French, with the monarchy. He's coming up through the academy, which was state-sponsored. He has been painting things that end up in Louis XVI collection. Then he sort of, then he becomes, this left-wing, very liberal guy on the side of the Jacobins, very anti-monarchy. He's thrown into prison in 1794. The terms of his imprisonment were rather liberal in that he was allowed to paint. But if you look close up, you can see this painting actually is very thinly done. He does not have a lot of paint. And he's doing this self-portrait in a mirror. So one of his students was able to get him a mirror in prison. And he does this, anyways, it's hard to see. If you see this in person, you'll see how really, really thin the paint is spread on this canvas. Even the fact that you can see brushstrokes is unusual in David. If David had his way, there would be no brushstrokes. And here you can see sort of this coat. Again, we're looking at self-portrait. How does David see himself or want to be seen by others at this moment? Serious? Definitely. He doesn't know if he's going to live or die right now. He's in prison, kind of awaiting his sentence. Yes?
What's angry says fist clenched around the brush, around the palette.
Tense, very tense. Yeah, he does have his fist clenched. Fist clenched around the brush, around the palette.
Palette.
What's that? Yeah, palette. With these very minimal, the most economical he could possibly be with paint is what he's doing right now. He does not have a lot of paint to spare. They're not these types of materials. He does his face sort of in shadows. His jaw is also seems very clenched. It's thought that maybe he was suffering from gout or syphilis or something, but unsure. His clothes. Anyone want to comment on his clothes?
Worn out royal.
They are worn out. They're a little bit shabby. I wouldn't call it royal, but yeah, it's sort of in between identifying. He's not identifying exactly the commoner because he has nice and shabby. Yes?
Looks like wool, like, something you double up the bed sheet, you just put the wool trench coat on, you just sleep on the floor. How a prison was over there in France then, but I imagine it was pretty.
Yeah, he looks a little bit disheveled. He doesn't look quite totally put together. Yeah, this is definitely sort of David on kind of harder times. He doesn't do anything with the background. It becomes completely unimportant. He's in jail. There's not much background. He probably lives in a chair. Yeah. Yeah?
Is it too hard to suppose that he and Maroc were lovers?
Yes. Yes, it's too hard to suppose that. Yes. Yeah, so this is David in prison. David gets released from prison and ends up doing this painting, very large scale, in 1799. This is the intervention of the Sabines. Again, we have a classical story, a story from the Roman past. The story here is that we had the Romans and the Sabines were neighboring states. The Romans always seem to be getting into trouble with this. They did not have, and the Romans sort of realized they don't have any women, and they need to propagate. So they decide, I think I have a painting of it, this is Poussin from a century earlier, during the rape of the Sabines. The Romans, this is Romulus, the Romans at this signal given by Romulus, which is him lifting his red cape, they have the Sabines over for dinner. When Romulus gives the signal, all the Romans basically make off with the Sabine women and rape them. So this is essentially the founding of the Roman state. You can see sort of here the Sabine woman just grabbing at the hair of this Roman. An older woman is sort of beseeching these Romans, like, please don't do this, what are you doing? Here the Sabines sort of being clutched away by this Roman soldier, while this is either sort of the husband or the father being chased off. So this is the rape of the Sabines. When the next part of this story, which is what David does, is the intervention of the Sabines. So what happens is the Sabine men are really pissed off. Their wives, their daughters have been kidnapped and raped by the Romans. So they plot, they wait several years, they rebuild their forces, they plot their revenge on the Romans. And they go back and attack the Romans, and they want to get their wives and their, basically their daughters back, or their sisters, or what have you. And in the middle of this, what happens is that the Sabine women intervene. Here we have the leader of the Sabine women, and she says, wait a second, it's been several years, now we love our Roman husbands, there's children involved here. You would be killing off, the father of your own grandchild. Like, please don't do this. Here again, this woman is sort of holding up this child, like, have mercy at least for the child, don't kill the child's parents. Yeah.
Why are they naked, basically, the soldiers?
Why are they naked? Any thoughts? Yes?
Because they would be naked back then. They fought millions of wars.
They fought naked, and this is a classical theme. This is not David trying to dress this up in modern times. Yes?
My question would be not why are they naked, why is every one person fully clothed? Like, even the other women, they have their clothing taken off, and it's this one woman who is like right there in the middle, she's dressed fully, like...
I know, that's partly, again, the decorum of the time. So we're sort of mixing in sort of historical fact with the decorum of the time. Is that a hand?
So maybe also the David's trying to add emphasis to her.
Yeah?
Making her the focus. That's also why she's in white and she stands out a lot more.
Yeah, she stands out a lot more. She's dressed in white, this idea that she's innocent. And it would really be not acceptable to display a painting of a fully naked woman in the midst of all these naked men. You can do a naked woman when she's lying nude and it's just her and the male viewer is supposed to gaze upon her body, but not in the midst of these naked men. That would, again, making these sort of conscientious choices about how to display everyone in sort of the most sympathetic light. Well, he's also showing off his academic training. I mean, David knows how to do a naked body. David is trained in front of naked men. The way you would take a light drawing class. He's showing that I do understand this. This is not like Caravaggio, who's never had that kind of training. David does have that kind of training. What his message is here is actually very conservative. He's sort of going back to this idea of like, hey guys, can we all just get along? Let's just stop this fighting and this silliness and let's resolve our issues. He's doing that in part because now he's going with a neutral term. He had been, again, sponsored by the state. He's on the Jacobin side. He gets thrown in jail when the Jacobins fall out of power. And now he just wants to be done with it. He is not, he does not want to risk his life. David is not a hero. He's not ready to die for life, liberty, and equality and things like that. Now he wants everyone to get along. Now there was no salon in 1799 because the government was in complete disarray. There were no funds. So David ends up actually displaying this privately in his studio and charging a fee for it. So for once, people are actually able to get up close and personal to a history painting, to a large-scale painting that would have been seen in the salon is on the ceiling. So it's also sort of interesting to be able to see these details. David thinks about it, of course, in terms of the salon, where you can see sort of the two heroes, the two sides of the story, and the Sabine woman who's separating them. So even from a distance, you would be able to tell what's going on. But when you get the fuller information of things up close, you notice the children, you notice the slum bodies, you notice the chaos behind, even as David still maintains that original clarity with which he painted things like Over the Horizon. Yes?
When did they start fighting? Because we also see Napoleon do the.
Oh no, this is not fighting the new. They're not fighting the French Revolution in the new. David is going back to Roman times. Yeah, the Romans are fighting. I don't know. Anyone know their Roman history very well?
What part of Roman history?
When they started fighting the new?
Well, that could trace back before that.
I
mean,
think
you can go back to the
it's more
Spartans.
like when did they invent armor?
I mean, you can go back to the Spartans and still see something like that. So.
Yeah. Intimidation?
Yeah. And always making them taller. And then it seems to me after you fighting like two names like Scott.
Excellent. Did you get that? So the idea is that you have intimidation when you're wearing your big hat, the plume, you look taller and big, but then when they see you're naked, basically you know that this person is legit. They're not trying to cover up. They're really a good fighter. Yeah. So essentially, this is the sort of, again, people would have read these paintings as kind of allegories for what's going on in the French Revolution. That was intentional by David. Even though David paints Ode to the Horatii in 1785, it still has the themes that were brewing that became important to the French Revolution when it began in 1789. Now it's 1799, and David is like, I am really kind of out of here. I am not taking sides. What happens next, of course, is part of the reason David was never killed for all of his shifting loyalties and whatnot, is because everyone realized what a great painter he was. And a great painter is very useful to whoever's in power because you get your good propaganda. So Napoleon rises to power out of all of this craziness. And David essentially becomes Napoleon's painter. Here he's depicting Napoleon crossing the Alps. Napoleon, of course, is supposed to be sort of this dynamic element on the canvas. He's the center of attention. His horse is sort of, it's a striding horse. He points onward and upward. We're using that dynamic diagonal. The horse is all in a frenzy. Napoleon's cape is all in a frenzy. Lots of action, even though there's not a lot of action in portraits. There's generally not a lot of action in portraits. You still have to do the guy and his face and whatever. But here, we have all of this stuff going on. The horse's tail sort of whipping in the wind. We see the wind is coming from this this direction, and the cape is going crazy. And David etches Napoleon's name into the rocks, commemorating that he's been able to cross the Alps, a very difficult thing to do. And he also etches the name of other people who had crossed the Alps before Napoleon, only sort of 2 others. Now, historically, it seems that Napoleon crossed the Alps on a donkey, but that wouldn't be a very good portrait. So, David does this, has him astride his horse, this strong leader. The other thing we know about Napoleon, he was short, yes. Apparently not as short as everyone likes to think he is, but like around 5'6"-ish. That's still short for a guy. Not bad. But he was short for a general. He was shorter also than a lot of his troops. So how does David get around this?
He makes him dominate the horse.
He's really oversized for that horse. Yes, definitely. You know, and he looks directly at the viewer. You feel the power in his gaze. The horse is praised, but Napoleon has complete control, right? That's sort of the message here. In the back, we see the French troops, you know, who are kind of lugging cannons and things along with them. But Napoleon rides astride his horse, and everything is good, essentially. He's not slugging along. He is really doing the real thing across the Alps.
But in the 1800s, the general populace was 5'6", 5'7". Why do we get this troop idea?
I don't know. I mean, he did have, I think perhaps because he's always in comparison to the troops, he was much shorter. I just don't think he was tall as that. But if anyone wants to do research on Napoleon's true height, I recommend. So it's very interesting that David changed loyalty once again. David is essentially a political chameleon who, at the end of the day, really does not want to die for the French state. He doesn't want to be involved in this fighting, and he's willing to become Napoleon's painter. Even though Napoleon ends up standing for everything that was against David's cause, you know, what these people were fighting the revolution for. And Napoleon ends up crowning himself emperor of France, which is essentially like king, but almost worse maybe. So we have again, from all of the conflicts, emerged Napoleon. He has all of this power because he's been a military leader. He's been in Egypt. At one point, he had essentially conquered almost all of Europe because of either political connections or because people didn't want to fight or because they were fighting. And so we have almost, again, this idea of empire introduced by Napoleon, who's saying, now I'm going to crown myself emperor of all of France. And what he depicts here, what David depicts here, commissioned, of course, by Napoleon to commemorate his coronation, where we see the Pope, there's the Pope, is at this coronation, but Napoleon does not want the Pope to crown him, because that would imply what?
Divine right.
Allegiance to the Roman Church? Yeah. And that somebody has the power to crown him emperor. He's saying, no, the church is not above me. It's not the church that's giving me power. I'm giving myself power. I'm going to put this crown on my head. Now, that's not what's depicted in the painting. What's depicted in the painting is the next step, where Napoleon here is crowning his wife Josephine there, who's kneeling before him. And this is specifically what Napoleon wanted depicted in this painting. But it occurs in front of the Pope, who Napoleon requested would raise his hand and bless this. So again, David, even though it's a very sort of complicated painting with a lot of specific portraits involved, for instance, this is Napoleon's mother, who is actually not at the coronation, but Napoleon requested that she be put into the painting. Even though there's a lot of people involved in the scene, David still has worked with sort of these divisions, where he has the clergy on one side, and then he has members of sort of the French Napoleon's team, or whatever you want to call it, on the other side. So we have the Catholics and then the rest of the people. So it's still sort of divided legibly if you want to start dissecting this painting. Ultimately, and this took place, of course, in Notre Dame, in Paris, so we have sort of this idea that Napoleon is able to all of these lands in addition that he has conquered. This happens in 1804. Again, you can see, history painting takes a while. This painting is commissioned, but of course it takes a very long time to do these big monumental canvases. And this is again why David isn't able to ever finish the Ode to the Tennis Court, because allegiances were changing so fast. Napoleon gets into power, wants to stabilize his power, and partly the way you do that is by producing big history paintings showing yourself in power. That's the power of the image. So we can compare, how can we compare these two? David's early work and later work.
The meanings are totally opposite.
The meanings are opposite in what way?
One is, the first one is, him wanting equality and revolting against the government that was in power. And it's the opposite, where he wants, what was before.
Yeah, so here we have sort of a revolt perhaps against what was in power, about loyalty to the state. Here we're kind of back to where we were before. I saw another hand. Yeah?
Well, even though they're both history paintings, one is something that happened already, something classic. The one below is happening right now, at the moment.
Exactly, they're both history paintings, but one has a classical theme, was not actually happening right then, and the other is literal history that happened essentially just a few years earlier. Yes? There's a lot more detail in the later work. Why might we suspect that was? It's not meant to be viewed from high up. It's not for the salon. It's for one guy. He only has to please Napoleon. Yes?
Aren't they both commissioned by the state?
Yeah, essentially are both commissioned by the state. Absolutely. But for very different ends, right? Yeah?
The whole focus and point of the icons is not often it's regal. And so it requires a lot of control. And so that's why we do it that way. It's still seen the height of the columns and that, and the other one, the point is the story itself.
Yeah, here we have a very distilled sense of the story. People would say, okay, I get what this is about, and everyone's in the foreground, and you don't need a lot of detail. Because Napoleon's portrait is essentially regal, yeah, we have to have all of that finery, all of that niceness. Any other thoughts comparing the paintings? Which one's more legible printed?
The top.
The top one, absolutely. Going back to that idea of the economy that someone was using, in part because of the structure of the salon. Also, yeah, somebody mentioned we had this neoclassical theme. This is not a neoclassical theme. This is very recent history that David is now being asked to paint. Question? No? So we also have later Napoleon wants David to show him not as a war hero as we saw when he was crossing the Alps, not as an emperor when we saw with the coronation. Now we just have Napoleon in his study, where Napoleon is trying to show people he's been working all day for you guys. As you can see, the clock is at 4:13. It's very early in the morning. The implication is that Napoleon is a hard worker. He either rises early or he's pulled an all-nighter. He shows him in his study, which is not on the battlefield. Now it's about sort of the laws that Napoleon has made. What kind of outfit is he wearing? It's sort of a general, yeah, it's like, I guess, state or military, but not something you actually, I think, fighting. This is not in his coronation robe. This is not Louis XIV. We see him sort of in toned down clothes, and we sort of see a punch in his body. This is not an ideal body. This is not about him projecting incredible power. In fact, if you look in his face, he looks very tired, worn, weary, things like that. He's also showing there's his sword, but of course, it's not really being used. It's just sort of off to the side. It's not on his body. He's showing sort of there's codes here. We have the candles that are burning very low. that would be the message of this painting. Very different from when he comes onto the scene as this crazy general who decided he's going to take over Italy, he's going to take over Spain, he's going to take over everything. Sorry, and there we go. I'm always anticipating myself. So the differences between these two are great. Does anyone want to take this on? Older. He looks a lot older, definitely. He's balding, right? You can see the receding hairline. He's what?
War versus peace.
War versus peace, absolutely.
On one side, it looks like he's trying to use the whole environment to project how dynamic he is, and on the other side, he looks pretty laid back, very relaxed, almost tired almost.
Yeah, so here he's using that environment to show the absolute dynamism, the action of Napoleon. Here, it's where he looks kind of tired. It's not about action, it's maybe about hard work. Hard intellectual work, maybe, not even hard physical work. Yes?
The colors that go on the right seem more golden and royal and important, and on the left it seems more dramatic and...
Yeah, absolutely. The one on the left is far more dramatic. And here we do have a sort of golden tinge to things. On the right, we're supposed to sort of look around and see what else is going on with Napoleon. We're supposed to notice the time on the clock, the burnt down candles, the sword, the Napoleonic code, etc. But here we don't, we're just supposed to really focus on the body of the general, the way he's showing his power through his actual physical form. So a lot has sort of changed in the way Napoleon himself kind of wants to be viewed. So, in any case, we'll get back to Napoleon. I just want to show you examples of neoclassicism, not just in France, but in the building, say, of the White House, in Thomas Jefferson's Monticello, if anybody has been to these places. Why would new government or statesmen in the U.S. be interested in building the neoclassical style? Yes?
Wrong with the Republic.
Absolutely.
We are a Republic.
Yeah, this new idea of the republic, the ideas of democracy, and it's a way to get legitimacy. When you're building in these styles, you're saying like, hey, you remember Greece, you remember Rome? Transfer those ideas over here, please. So this neoclassicism was not just limited to what was going on in France, but also happening in the U.S. We'll return to the U.S. in like maybe 100 years, a couple of weeks. But in any case, just keep that in mind. It's not limited to France. As I mentioned, W had a lot of students. 0 days of students. This is Antoine Gros. He became the painter of Napoleon's military exploits because David it's unclear if David didn't want to go with Napoleon on military exploits, if he thought he was too old, or if Napoleon didn't really ask him and Gros kind of went out. But for whatever reason, David's student, Antoine Gros, ends up sort of sometimes traveling with Napoleon on these military conquests. This is Napoleon in the pest house at Jaffa. Jaffa today, I have, nope. Yep, it's coming. There's Jaffa today. It's in present-day Tel Aviv. So you can see how far afield Napoleon really is. Sorry, this is earlier than the Napoleon in the study painting. This is where the story here, does anyone know the story from your reading?
The pest house supposed to be a place for the weak?
The pest house is a place for the weak and ailing, really. Yeah?
And he wanted to show how he was able to, he was strong enough to go there and show his own strength.
Absolutely.
He wasn't afraid of being there.
Yeah, so the French soldiers have caught plague, they're sick, they're far from home, obviously, they're waging war against the Turks. They're in Jaffa, which is today Israel. And here we have the French soldiers, and Napoleon is requested to come by and show his support for his troops. And the way Gros paints this is that Napoleon is sort of literally touching the wounds of the French soldiers, who, as if he's sort of Christ healing the sick, again, with his touch. Of course, in reality, Napoleon would probably never have done that. He would have been terrified of doing that because these people are contagious And the rumor goes that after Napoleon visited the troops, he had them all poisoned to prevent having to deal with the sick people and getting their bodies and whatnot. So he just didn't want to deal with it. Of course, we don't know exactly what happened because there was no intrepid reporter going along here. We didn't have CNN to tell us exactly what was happening. We don't have any embedded reporters. But that is sort of what was rumored to have happened. So this painting is kind of, again, very much on the lines of propaganda. We have Napoleon being seen as this kind of martyr almost for even touching the sick troops. He's not afraid. He looks them sort of dead in the eye, even as sort of people behind him are covering their noses from the stench of these disgusting people. No, Napoleon says, I will touch you. I will show you that I'm not afraid. This probably did not ever actually happen at all. But nonetheless, we have sort of the impression that it might have. And this is sort of, again, what Napoleon would have wanted as propaganda to say that it did happen. Again, you can see sort of grow as Napoleon's student, picking up on some of the themes. What could you say, what are some similarities between these two? What? The design of the arches, absolutely. David has classical arches. Here we're sort of given a hint of Moorish or Orientalist kind of arches, definitely. Yes?
The way that you have the brothers and the father. Compared to Napoleon as women as.
Okay, so we have the organization of the brothers and the father compared to Napoleon's relationship with his troops. He reaches his hand out to touch that ailing French body. Yes? Yes, there's much more detail in the top painting. Why might that be? Okay, that's not necessarily for the salon. And also, this is an actual event. This is supposed to, David is sort of picking and choosing from a classical story. Here, Crow is trying to give us all of these sort of details to say, hey, it's happened. It was actually, it actually really happened, I swear. So the more kind of details you have of that, the more that might attest to the reality effect that Napoleon actually touched, the pussy bodies of the French troops. But there might be sort of critique. We still see, the bodies of the French, being, this is not the way you want to think about your troops. There is something very kind of disheartening about this image that even though Napoleon's there, it's not necessarily going to be all right for everyone. Even in the propaganda, it doesn't look like things are necessarily going to turn out okay. We have sort of all of these other bodies that are not okay. We have the mix of sort of, these are the Muslim doctors who are also kind of working with, Muslim people here who are also ailing. And so we have this mix of bodies, sick bodies that are not, that this is not necessarily going to end okay, even though Napoleon is there, and even as Napoleon extends his arm, and even though Napoleon's body is fine and untouched, there's a hint that things are not as good as Napoleon's like wants us to be. So we'll end there on Tuesday. We'll do the review. Please, the review is like you guys discuss all your